And now, it's time for TJwow.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are and when you are listening to this recording. Thank you so much for being here. You know me. I'm Jo Cook. I'm your host today for the webinar. I'm also the deputy editor of Training Journal. And this is me at the Training Journal Awards, and they are opening up again soon. So if you know somebody who's done some good work, do get them along to the Training Journal website. It's free to enter the awards, and maybe they can hold one of those lovely, gorgeous awards in December this year. So our format of our webinar, if you've been here before, you know what it's all about. It's conversation. And actually, some of our speakers sometimes get a bit worried that we don't have backup questions, backup plans, and we really don't, because it's all about you guys and the conversation and where you want it to go. So that's what we're doing today. And you've got the chat window you can use that with each other, use that for us. Please do share things. If you've written a blog post, if you've done a video, if you've got a case study, if you know someone who has, please do share it in the chat window. That's what it's all about, is finding those resources. And if it's you as well, great, go ahead. At the bottom of the screen, we've got the question and answer pod. It's a great way to make sure that I see your questions. I promise 100% I will see your question, and I will put it to our speakers as easily as I can, and to make sure that we get some great conversation going. So please do use that if you want to make sure I see your question. Also, you can join us on Twitter. So you can join in the conversation now if you want to on #TJwow. Or you can follow up the conversation a little bit later on. And Debbie, who is our editor-in-chief, she will be tweeting today. It's usually John, but he's decided to go on holiday. Damn him. Never mind. He'll be back next time. Also, you know that all of our webinars are available as recordings on the Training Journal website. So this is available publicly, and we'll put this up as soon as we can. Let's jump into our session and have a word with our speakers. We've got three fabulous speakers for you this month. We have Marco, we have Helena, and we have Dana Maria, all having different roles and different aspects of what they focus on in virtual reality. So they're all waiting very patiently behind the scenes. I can see their webcams are all on, and I'm going to bring them onto screen now, and we're going to get some introductions from them. So let me bring on those webcams. Here we go. Lots of waves. Hello. Thank you very much indeed. Now, as you know, what we're going to do is get some introductions. Marco's got his little waving hands. We're going to get some introductions, get some first thoughts on our question today about virtual reality, but also really want to know a bit about what you think too. So let's start with Helena, then Marco, and then Dana Maria. Tell us a little bit, first of all, about who you are and what is it that you do.
Hi, so I'm Elena. I'm working as a researcher in Fast Future Publishing. We're launching the educational area in Fast Future, thinking about what will be coming next in education, what technologies will transform learning. And yes, my background is in education and in neuroscience, so I'm looking forward to talking with you about virtual reality, that it's such an important technology that will have major, and it's having major impact in learning and education.
Thank you, Helena. And that's what we really want to explore, is that impact that it's making. Before we move on to Marco, Helena, just tell us, whereabouts in the world are you and what time is it? And please tell people it's not my fault.
Yes. So actually, I'm speaking from Peru in Latin America, and it's 5 a.m. So I hope I am coherent and cohesive enough to to think right now. But yes, I'm just having an early start and happy to be here.
Thank you, Helena. And I did ask Helena because she was based in the UK rather than getting up too early. But I think logistics just conspired against you, Helena. So thank you so much for still doing this. Really appreciate that. So Marco, you haven't had quite such an early start today, I don't think. But tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I'm in Somerset and it's 10 o'clock, so it's a nice time. So, yeah, I wear many hats. So I'm a chief commercial officer for Blue Bottle Beers, content collaboration company. I'm a non-exec for Gamification Nation, ALX Training. I have my own VR company, very much in consultancy and practice. I also sit on 2 tech funds, and I'm an investor primarily in VR, AR, blockchain now. So I come at it very much from a practice perspective. So corporate learning, higher ed, creating experiences to be utilized within those 2 environments.
Great, thank you very much, Marco. So what I really like about this is a really broad experience, which is important. So thank you very much for that, Marco. And I'm just going to get you to pop yourself on mute, because I think you're just getting a little bit of feedback, but we shall cope with that today. And Dana Maria, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Dana Maria. I am since 2010 a professional coach trainer, and my mission is to help people to become the captains of their lives. And I believe virtual reality is the most powerful tool to help me with my mission, and that's why I founded the startup Captain VR.
Thank you very much. I really like that introduction. The captain of our own lives. So our starting point for our question today, we'll come back to Helena, Marco, and then Dana Maria to get this going. But also in the chat window, really want your thoughts on this. Is virtual reality really going to help people learn? Or is it just a gaming thing? Is it just something that's fun for games? So I know already that obviously our speakers are going to say, well, of course we can use it to learn and it's going to be amazing. I have picked them for that reason. But, you know, play devil's advocate. Maybe you think otherwise. Let us know in the chat window, even if you agree, you know, what concerns do you have? What challenges are there doing that? So let's use the chat window and the Q&A for that. So, Helena, let's come to you first of all. What's your kind of opening thoughts about virtual?
So my initial thoughts in this topic is that in the extent of virtual reality engaging emotions and engaging active learning from participants, from learners, then it will always involve learning. Yes, a passive learner and a spectator, then not necessarily. So we always have to put in the position of, depending on how the technology is being used, then it will have interesting contributions to the learning process. I consider that engaging in a new virtual world could facilitate the work for trainers and for people to engage in realities, working on their collaborative skills, in their soft skills, in their creativity, that could definitely contribute to their training and the future of work.
I really like that point about the future of work. Obviously, you know, when in any L&D, often there's that kind of, well, here's the learning part, and then here's the work part, but the direct link, I really love that you've highlighted that. Thank you so much, Helena. And Marco, I mean, why is learning in virtual reality such a great thing?
Sorry, say that again?
Why is learning and virtual reality such a great thing, a great pairing?
Yeah, I think that's quite simple, actually, in that with this, I say, newer modality, although that VR has been around for 40 odd years now, but I suppose we call it newer because the technology is now caught up. So it's available easier or more easily than it has done in the past. For me, it's quite simple. It's in the virtual world, we can replicate the real world. It's a very fine line between the two. Our trick as learning professionals, or the trick as learning professionals, is how we make that, how we trick the brain, if you like, into thinking that it is, although we're in the virtual world, it feels like we're actually doing it for real. So that's the real trick, and that's what we call presence. And if we don't have that, then it's just doing something. So it's a bit like you mentioned the word game, and of course you would go that way because that's where VR has taken up mostly in gaming. But for me, it's around how we take the elements of gaming, how we bring that into a real life scenario, and we utilize it to, in effect, create what we could do in the real world, but is a challenge either from a cost or an operational perspective or an admin perspective. So we're just replicating.
That's a really great point.
We're just replicating we're just replicating in effect what we do in the real world.
Thank you, Marco. And I think there's some really good points there about, sometimes things might be too dangerous to go and replicate, a personal safety element, or too costly to go and do that. And I like the point about bringing in elements from gaming, which is what, gamification and game mechanics is all about. And actually, we've been doing this forever and a day. It's how we learn, is through playing games. So I like that actually what we're talking about here might be virtual reality, but it's bringing so many other threads together as always. What have we got going on in the chat window before we come to Dana Maria? Mike says, I was very skeptical about virtual and augmented reality until I saw some live examples at the Learning Technology Conference a couple of weeks ago. Thanks, Mike. Mike, just put in just a sentence of what you understand AR to be, just in case people haven't heard of that. And he adds, I could really see the use of AR in learning and development. Neil Gavin says, what did you see that changed your mind? Good question. And Rachel, who is Burnham L&D, says, so it can take us places that we can't easily go in real life because of cost and safety concerns. Really excellent points. Like when you go to the moon or go underwater, things like that, that might be challenging. So thanks for getting that chat going. Let's kind of finish off our introduction with Dana Maria. Dana Maria, our question is really about learning in VR, and your area, an award-winning area, is about coaching using virtual reality.
Yes, so first I think we can create very effective virtual reality environments, learning environments, where we can practice with new behaviors and new skills in the most powerful way. So yes, I won the award for the best virtual reality idea in the Netherlands in 2016, and this is about fear or love. And also these fears, we can practice with these fears and challenges in a virtual environment in a safe way with the help of a coach. And this is so effective. I did some research, I did not research, but I practiced, I tested this on people in my life, clients, also people who had fears, for example, wasp phobia. And this woman, this example, nobody could help her. She was 51 years old. She did EMDR therapy. She had, she could not get any help. She was, how you call it in England, that you are not, you cannot be treated anymore. And she came to me and asked me, yes, but yeah, anyway. So she came to me and asked me if I could help her with virtual reality. And within 3 sessions, we already had significant results. So it is so powerful, such a powerful tool. So it's amazing.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And I think it's when you have those real use cases, it's really important. And Marco, you were mentioning this actually when we were chatting before the webinar today about a similar use case. When you just a quick touch.
Yeah. So I had a person come into my office beginning of last year. They had never flown on a plane, so they suffered with vertigo. And I put them into a plane. So I put them in VR and I put them into a plane. And bearing in mind they're just in the office. And then I took them out of the plane, teleported them, as we say, and put them onto the wing. and I got him to edge to the wing. And as he edged to the wing, and bearing in mind, what he is viewing or thinking he's viewing is that he's on the wing of an airplane, I then got him to the edge to look over, and of course it's 30 foot down, or he thinks it's 30 foot down. And what made us smile and laugh is he got to the edge, and if you can picture us, he then started to wave his hands because he thought he was going to fall over. I actually thought he was going to fall over, so I threw a beanbag in front just in case he was. Thankfully, he didn't. He then, stayed there for a while, looked around, looked behind him, sort of went back, moved forward, went back. And that was his experience. And then about 4 to 6 weeks later, I had a text from him saying, "Hi, Marco, just wanted to let you know, I'm in New York and I flew." Now, bearing in mind, this was a person who was 42 years old, had never been on a plane before. And he said, "Thank you. It was going in your experience that gave me the confidence and actually broke down," and this was the telling point for me, broke down some of my perceived fears that I had around about flying. So not that he's flying all over the world, but, that experience helped him get over that blockage, if you like, and he then went onto a plane.
That's absolutely awesome, Marco. Thank you so much. And Neil in the chat window says, "I hope he flew inside the plane and not on the wing." I'm sure he did. Elena, let's come to you. Your thoughts about this, because you come from a kind of a more of a research background and looking at this. What are you hearing in these conversations?
Yeah,
so far?
I think it's really interesting to think about the two sides of that technology. On one side, it's the learner or the participant who is involved in its emotions, and it's able to overcome the fears as the flight fear or any other phobia, or any other challenge as well, right? Any skill that they want to accomplish, any goal they want to work in the midterm, long term, and they can practice through that technology. But there's also this other side of the technology that is the designer one, and the trainer or the coach that will be able to design really interesting virtual reality softwares that even with artificial intelligence, then we will be having unsupervised virtual reality software teaching people new things and modifying the learning experience as the training goes on. So I think that's really interesting, and it's an opportunity to personalize learning and tailor it to the learner's needs.
Absolutely. I really like the idea of that personalization, the tailoring. And this is where, there's a lot of rhetoric and narrative talk in learning and development at the moment about personalized learning. Now, obviously, what Marco and Dana Maria were talking about was the kind of the coaching element that's highly personalized. But obviously, if we're looking at training other people, maybe firefighters, for instance, I assume we can do something like that, then, can we personalize that? Is that still a sheep dip approach? Is that still just getting everybody through in this? So I'm going to come to Marco on that one in just a moment. In the chat window, Burnham L&D, Rachel says, "It makes it possible to take risks and learn from mistakes, which we know is a very powerful way of learning safely. I heard a great example of this recently being used in a scaffolding company. Learning felt very real and practical to their staff." Rachel, I have to get you on microphone to talk about that. Having done quite a lot of indoor climbing in my day, I still wouldn't want to go up a scaffolding tower, it must be said. So Rachel, if you don't mind, if you can, just unmute, and if you can't, no problem. And let us know, how can you do scaffolding training in virtual reality.
What it was about was an experience where the senior manager within the company had been on site one time when there had been an accident. Fortunately, nobody was hurt in that accident, but the staff member who had dropped something from a great height suddenly realised the mistake that they had made. They'd taken a shortcut that they shouldn't have done. And what they realised was actually they could mimic that in VR without there being any risk to anybody. But the emotional impact, the huge, learning, that person will never take that kind of risk again, that kind of shortcut. They could do that in that VR situation. And I've done that I've done examples of climbing towers, and I've made mistakes, and I've fallen off the tower and managed to kill myself, I have to say. And, but you learn from that. Okay, that's what I did. That's the cost. So you can actually have a go at doing that task, but without putting either yourself or other people at risk, but still get some of that emotional impact of making a real mistake in real life. And so in this scaffolding company, they were reporting real differences in terms of their recording of near misses. So their recording of near misses and sort of potential accidents had gone down as a result of doing that. But also the training was really liked by their staff, because instead of being talked at, they were doing something that felt, oh, okay, we understand why we're doing this. This feels like our real job. So there was none of that resistance to it that they had experienced when they did more traditional classroom style training.
Yeah, because there's only so many times you can tell people this is the impact. So if I go back to my indoor climbing days, you have one of the things, you have a hook that you can put your carabiners in for when you're doing lead climbing. And what you would see is kids putting their fingers in to pull themselves up the wall. But if they fall off, I'm sorry, that finger is staying on the wall and the hand is coming away from it. And it terrified me every time I saw that. But you can only tell a kid so many times about that. Maybe if they'd in virtual reality experienced that or seen it, then maybe that would make a bit more of a difference. So I think that's a really powerful example, Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So what have we got in the chat window? Marla said something really interesting. So Marla, let's see if we can get you unmuted. So Marla, look at the top left-hand corner of your screen, and what you should be able to see is a grey microphone. If you click it, it should go green. So say hello, Marla.
Okay, give me a moment.
I do hear you. It's very quiet, so if you can speak up really loud, that would be good.
Is it any better now? Do you hear me?
Let's see if we can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
No, Marla. So thank you for trying. It's not quite loud enough for us today, so maybe another day we'll get you a microphone. But what Marla said in the chat, which was really interesting, is that she works at the Swiss Association for the Blind, and they've used virtual reality to make the public aware of visual impairment and see what a partially blind person sees or misses seeing. And I think that's hugely powerful. That's amazing, Marla. Thank you. And that. Oh, can we hear you better now, Marla?
Do you hear now? Okay. Okay.
We can just about hear you, Marla, but it's not quite loud enough. So let's pop you back on mute, Marla, and we'll use the chat window, but maybe we'll try again another day. Thank you very much. But Marla actually asked thank you, Marla, asked the question in the chat pod. So let's actually kind of talk about that question now. So the question Marla asked was, do you think that virtual reality can be used in the treatment of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and retraining behavioural patterns? So bearing in mind Dana Maria does the coaching element, I'll come to Dana Maria
yes,
first.
for sure. Also, Skip Rizzo, that's a famous doctor who's already done more than 20 years of experience and research on post-traumatic stress with Iraqi war veterans. He did a lot of research and had a lot of evidence on this topic. So, and also in the Netherlands we have the Mental Health Care Institute that has a lot of research already on done on anxiety and how you call it, psychosis. So it's helping, and myself, I'm practicing with new behavior, and yeah, I saw it is amazingly effective and very fast, a very fast way to practice with these challenges in life, so that you're rewiring your brain, because you can practice, for example, in 1.5 hours just the same thing, and this is a way to rewire your brain. And in real life, you then learn this automatic behavior. Then this automatic this behavior starting to be automatic in real life, and this is also how to get a feeling of control over these challenges. So yes.
Thank you. And it's so important to kind of explore that and get over those challenges, as you say. And if virtual reality can help, then it's just another tool that we can use. It's awesome. And Helena, what are your thoughts on this about whether we can use virtual reality for the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder?
What Dana Maria said, I think it's really interesting how in traditional therapy, for example, the patient goes into a process of speaking and going inside their thoughts and trying to figure out how to put words into their fears and experiences in order to rewire the brain. But in terms, using virtual reality allows the participant to create this empirical connection directly with the fear or the phobia, or in this case with the traumatic experience. So it faces the patient, and research, it's already proving the effect it has on patients. So I think that is really.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Okay, is it working now?
You wanted to try your audio again.
Oh, good.
We can hear you
Finally, okay. Yeah. Okay, well, I work for an association for blind people in Switzerland, which is basically a very big organization, actually. And we work with a lot of the latest technology to help our blind clients. So we had we use all of the newest technology that we can grab, be it from Google or Apple or whoever invents anything. So we have been working with the Oculus Rift and using it to teach the general public about how partially blind people actually see their environment. So when they actually walk in the streets, they might not see people coming from one side, but they might be perfectly able to see everything that's ahead of them. So you can simulate different types of surroundings which mimic actually different types of visual impairments. And this is very helpful also for employers and also for policymakers to make them understand what the challenges actually are of blind people to navigate in the public. Yeah. So this is a brief wrap-up of what we have been doing. Yeah. So yeah, and the other thing is also the reason why I asked my PTSD question is that I work very closely with a lot of my clients who are blind and visually impaired, and some of them are from places where they encountered terrible things in war. They got blind during a strike or something, and they end up with us. So we really have this immediate contact to people who
have PTSD, but also a visual impairment, and I'm really interested in how virtual realities could help these people also, if they have, of course, still the ability to see something. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I think it's such an interesting area to bring all of that kind of treatment together. I mean, we're talking a little bit more here about treatment rather than specifically learning and crossover. So Marla, thank you for your comment there. If you could just click that mute button again, and then we won't hear any background noise. Perfect, thank you. If you'd like to tell us a bit more in Training Journal about that journey, we would love to know more. Mark, I'm going to come to you on a
So MXR, of course, as always in learning, we love our acronyms. And MXR basically stands for mixed realities. So where we are, I think we have two, it feels like two very clear camps at the moment. So there's a lack of education, I believe. Obviously, it's my viewpoint that most people, when they talk about mixed realities, they're talking about mixing VR and AR in the same environment at the same time, which is obviously where we aspire to be. It would be great to be in virtual reality, doing an experience, and you've got a data overlay appearing in front of you. That would be really nice. But I actually look at mixed reality as being all our current modalities of learning in the same space at the same time. And I've done this work, have the ability to do this work. And the example I give is I'm in an experience. So I'm in a building. I'm going through a task, if you like, and I can press a button and a video will play and I will see the video, or a presentation will come up. Or here's another example, a trainer is training me and talking to me as I'm going through the experience. So these are modalities that we're all used to right now and have been living for many years. For me, the real trick is how we blend them all in together, which one helps on cost, of course. Of course it helps on cost. If we've already got predefined assets that we've been using, why don't we use them? You know, let's not reinvent the wheel. But also, I think it helps that overall experience that we're looking for, because when we learn naturally, we're utilizing different modalities. So that for me is what MXR stands for, mixed realities.
Thank you very much. That was something a little bit newer to me when I was doing some research for my TJ article about this. Mixed reality was just like, what's that? I even had to message you, didn't I, Marco, to say, what is MXR? Is it mixed reality? Am I understanding that correctly? So that was definitely a new one on me. Let's come to Neil now. Neil's somebody attending our webinar today. But Neil, you and Rachel have been doing some research about virtual reality, as you mentioned.
I don't suppose I've got any particular insights as such, because I'm coming at it from a position of curiosity rather than any expertise. But even just in the years since Rachel and I first started our research, and we saw some examples at Learning Technologies last year, we followed that up again this year. And Marco, this will resonate for you. It was the pill machine last year. This year, and I don't know if this is the mixed reality exactly, but Rachel and I were able to collaboratively work on building a communication satellite with the collusion and the assistance of a third person, a trainer, in the same virtual space. So that was quite interesting. I still think it's got a way to go. I think the totally immersive stuff is missing some elements, and I know Marco, again, we've talked about this around haptics and the sort of the real feedback, the touch and feel and weight and pushback. And I think a lot of these things, that's for me what was missing in that satellite experience. We're still using these paddles with buttons, but you have no real physical sense of what it would be like if you were wearing a glove and you got the real feedback to pick it up. I think there's a way to go yet, and I think healthy skepticism is probably a good place to be at the moment, but keeping a very open eye for the possibilities. And certainly for us in L&D, I think it's about not rushing blindly into it, but looking for where it would add to a learning experience. It's not the solution in itself, perhaps. And I think that sort of skeptical viewpoint is probably quite a good place to be at the minute. Rachel, I may have something to add to that.
Thank you so much, Neil. And Rachel in the chat pod has put a link to the kind of piece that you put together last year about it. And as Neil said, there's going to be more coming up on that. So that's a really interesting kind of look at things. What I love about that, more than anything about the topic actually, is the fact that Rachel and Neil both went, we don't know anything about this. Let's jump in and find out and share about it. I think that's absolutely awesome. So thank you very much on that. And I like the point about the context and not feeling things in the same way. And that's what got me when Rachel was talking about the scaffolding. And I was thinking, well, I know from climbing that when you put your foot on a round kind of foothold as opposed to a pointy foothold, that feels really different. Or if you've got the wrong shoes on a piece of scaffolding, do you slide one way or another? But also what we're looking at with virtual reality is, I think Neil has highlighted really well, is it's not necessarily about recreating exactly the environment that you're going to be in. Otherwise, you would go and do that in the real environment. What it's about is actually having that slight separation so that you can concentrate on various elements. So that, like Marco's example, you can stand on the wing of a plane. Like Dana Maria's example, you can be coaching somebody on something specific so that you can get closer to it and you can stop that any moment. So I think those kind of things are really important. Let's have a look at our next question. So this is from Rohit Talwar. Thank you, Rohit. And Rohit asks, what tests would you apply to determine whether VR is the right tool for an educational application? So that's a really great question to ask about any technology.
Probably one of the most important things is to make sure the learner knows what's their learning goal, what they want to accomplish, what skill they want to work in. They have a clear goal of their experience and a consciousness of what they want to accomplish. And also after the experience, I think it's important the feedback they get on what they've been through, what emotions have been involved, what in general what the experience has been. Because if we don't take all these active involvement and all these emotions that will involve the experience and the virtual experience, then we're not going to be able to take it into real life and to transfer the skills we've accomplished into different contexts. So I think it's really important for the participant to be actively involved in the learning process and what they want to accomplish.
Thank you very much. And obviously some of that goes for all learning and all choices of technology. So some really good elements there.
Mm-hmm. So I just want
Okay,
to
so Donna
talk
Maria,
to you then about the
what are
collaboration
your
I have
thoughts
with
about this
an
question? The
institute
tests you would
that
apply
is
to
working
determine
with
whether
girls who
virtual
are
reality
sexually
really is
abused.
the right
And we
solution.
are applying for funding to get a tool, virtual reality training tool, to help these girls to practice with situations and men that cause repeating behavior in this field, because 1 of 3 girls, something like that, don't judge me on the statistics, but have a repeating behavior in this area. So we want to create an environment, and this institute has already treated hundreds of girls. So we can really test groups. We're gonna use test groups in the first year. The girls who are not trained by this tool and girls who are trained by this tool. And in these test groups, we will get results and evidence-based results that will show us in 2 or 3 years that this tool will work more effectively, for example, than training without this tool. So yeah, this is how this collaboration is, and I think this is generally done with test groups, big test groups in the healthcare institution.
Thank you, Dana Maria. And I think that's a really interesting example of where I wouldn't naturally think that VR would be used for that. That's not where my brain naturally goes. But I think something that came up when we were discussing this earlier in the week was actually, you know, we talk about things like maybe firefighters as a good example where there's personal danger, but actually there can be emotional personal danger as well. And
Yeah, and for me, nothing has changed. So we've been applying tests to learning for years. So in effect, we apply the same, we should be applying the same tests. But one angle that I do come at it, because of course we're, with VR, whilst it's new and we're on the educational phase still, we're on this adoption curve. So, there's reticence and there's cautiousness from people. Some of them are real, some of them are perceived. But I always pose this question into the mix, is that if you have been trying to conduct a piece of training or teach a new skill up until this point, and it has not been delivering the business impact, whatever the business impact is that you require, then maybe virtual reality is the option that you could use. Because it's a bit like, is the insanity scenario. If we do what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. And I always use the customer service type interactions, conflict management as a great example. Very difficult to replicate that in a classroom, even face to face, because there are things that we can and cannot do in that interaction. And some things we can't do because HR would be involved and people would get sacked. But in VR, we can do that. We can have avatars in that space and we can shout and scream and potentially hit people. Not that we're doing it for real, of course. We can't do that in a real case scenario. So that might give us a good opportunity to use VR. So I come at it from let's not do it for the sake of doing it. Let's look at it from a business impact. Have we been doing things that are not really delivering the value or the impact that
that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Marco, and thank you, Helena and Dana Maria. We are going to move now to some reflection time. So our speakers are going to stay here. Don't worry, they're not going anywhere. I won't let them. But we are going to come off of webcam. So let's just say a visual goodbye for a moment. And we're going to go into some reflection because the time disappears as it always does. And what we're going to do is, first of all, practice with the text tool. So have a look on the left side of your screen. what you should see is a version of what I've got here. And you need to click the T-Text tool, click on the screen, just type your name, and then click away again. Like this, yes, absolutely right. And therefore you'll have some text on the screen. And what we'll be able to do then is just share some writing. So Rachel's done it. Well done, Rachel. So you just need to remember to click the T, click on the screen, type, and then click again, and it will show it to everyone. Now, if you're on a mobile device, Marla and Sandeep, you don't have the T-Text tool. What you can do is use the pen tool. Excellent, thank you, Rohit. We've got quite a few of you not on the whiteboard yet, so let's just make sure that it's working for everyone. So do remember to click on the T for text, click on the whiteboard and write your name, just to practice, and then click away again. It's the clicking again that seals your writing so that everybody can see it. That's the important bit. Okay, well done. So I think what we're going to do now is go into our question and actually find out some ideas from you. So you've had a lot of kind of discussion today. There's a couple of questions we haven't got to, so really apologies about that. We always run out of time, but I did paste them into the chat window, and you can always carry on the conversation on Twitter. But thinking about what we've covered today, what we've discussed, what you've learnt, what you've shared, what's your action point? What are you going to do after today? So use that T-Text tool. What are you going to do after today? So I'm going to put one up about the coaching kind of element. So some of the stuff that's been shared has been really interesting, and I hadn't thought about that quite so much in the past. And Marco has shared the Walmart virtual reality link there. So Stephen, that you may or may not have seen about it, but that might kind of help part of what you're thinking about with regards to how can we use this in leadership and management development and stuff like that. So maybe not directly, but it might be part of that. Marco says in the chat, Walmart have just purchased a virtual reality company to create their internal content. That's pretty interesting. That shows a huge step forwards, doesn't it? And a huge kind of vote of confidence in that. Thank you for sharing that, Marco. So what is it that you are going to do after today's discussion? What do you want to look up more about, read about? What are you going to do? So share that on that whiteboard. So we've got a few things here. Let's start at the top of the whiteboard. Reconnect with a virtual reality lab I met in Singapore who are developing multi-participant collaboration environments in virtual reality. That sounds pretty interesting. And if you ever want to share any of your stories and tell us a little bit more and share that on Training Journal, actually write for us, we would love that, continue that conversation. I've put my email address in the chat window, so you can always tell us a bit more about that. Back on the whiteboard, to learn a bit more about how VR can be used in learning. So hopefully we've whet your appetite, we've started a conversation around that for you. What else have we got? Keep an open mind on any new technology, including virtual reality. What a really great point. I love that. And that's part of one of the underlying themes of what today was for me. Thank you so much. Somebody says here, I'd love to be involved in a pilot with an organisation using VR. That's absolutely great. So that's about maybe making connections with people here, or maybe on Twitter, something about that. So Dana Maria, what is it that you're thinking about that VR lab in Singapore? You can just unmute and tell us what you're thinking.
Yes, I saw this question and I thought, wow, this is something I really want to know more about, because if you can meet each other in a virtual space from all over the world, for example, the best students come together to learn about a certain subject, to be great in this, and that has use for the whole world. This is really interesting to me. But also coaching people in a virtual environment. For example, I would like to coach somebody in Africa to help them them on a certain skill. So these environments, I was thinking of if it is something like that, because this I really want to, yeah, I would be really want to be interested in being in this, to participate also in this, how you say it, and how to share that with everybody, and yeah, get that in the world, the importance of this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Donna. So whoever wrote that, they've put, I will dig out their details and share them. So thank you very much if that was you. And I've just pasted in Donna Maria's website and Twitter handle, so you can get in contact directly a little bit easier there if you want to. So thank you very much. So Annie, don't worry if you couldn't write something on the screen. I'm sorry you couldn't. But you want to learn more about virtual reality in coaching for sure. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting area, so that's absolutely great. And Marco shared about UNICEF and Google have tech funds available for work in Africa, so that's another interesting point. Going back, oh, it's Rohit who said about the details of Singapore. So thank you, Rohit. So I'll leave you and Dana Maria to have a chat together. Back on the whiteboard, what have we got? I've read out Marla's from the chat window, which I've put on the whiteboard. And I'd love to be involved in a pilot. We've talked about that one. So Neil says, Rachel and I will have a follow-up conversation and agree how to pull together and share our latest research. That would be pretty cool, Neil. And if you tag TJwow or Training Journal or me, then we'll make sure that we promote that through the Training Journal Twitter handle and so on as well, so that we can get more of those details out there. So please do that. This is really interesting, all this stuff. Thank you, Neil. So let's come to Helena. Helena, you know, we've got some reflections here from people about what they're thinking and what they want to do next. What do you see here from a learning point of view? What are you picking up on, Helena?
So I think we're just starting to get to know this technology. I think there's lots of potential here, and the more it becomes accessible, we'll be seeing this technology everywhere, actually, because of all the important implications it has in training and in learning in general.
You see, once a session, I have to talk with my mute button on. I believe that is just the webinar law that I live by, so apologies about that. But I'm back again, don't worry. Helena, I was saying thank you very much for that. What are some of the specific points you're seeing that people are able to apply now about learning theory and VR, but also in the future too?
Sorry, do you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, can you say again? Sorry?
I was saying, what do you see as some of the specific things that people are picking up about virtual reality and good quality learning now and in the future?
Mm-hmm. I think that in general, people see the potential of using virtual reality now as a privilege to train soft skills such as collaborative skills, create collaborative environment, creative thinking, divergent thinking, problem solutions, etc. So I think now people is seeing this huge potential that technology has, that not any other technology has given us until now. So I think it's really interesting, and we'll be seeing much more of these combining with other technologies that will create very useful useful tools for coaching and learning.
Thank you so much for that. And Marco, last comment from you about what you're seeing here.
So I'm encouraged is the short answer. I think it's not a health warning per se, but I think I just would like to, if you like, just err on the other side, which is, for me, VR, I am totally convinced that virtual reality is here to stay, and will just get bigger and bigger, and it will become part and parcel of everyday life, just like e-learning has done back in the day. But the biggest challenge that we have right now, and it's the one for the consideration, is the scale. So whilst visualization VR, we can scale quite easily. So that's the Google Cardboards and the Samsung Gears, etc., etc. The full immersive stuff, that's a little bit more difficult because that's about hardware, laptops, PCs, managing those. Now that should change very soon, in that we are getting standalone HMDs, as we call them, head-mounted displays. So they are now released and they'll become mainstream. So that will make it easier. But there is this scale issue to overcome at some stage. But that shouldn't dissuade us from doing it. I think now is the time to. I'm seeing more and more companies becoming involved in VR because they are looking at it from a competitive edge. But also, encouragingly, it's breaking down silos. So whilst VR might be used by the marketing department, a conversation is then had to say to the marketing department, hey, what you've created can now be used in training. Oh, we hadn't considered that. So I'm starting to see those relationships become closer and closer, and we're breaking down those silos. Does that all make sense?
Makes sense to me. I'm hoping it makes sense to other people as well. They're far more clever than I am, so I'm absolutely sure it will do. And thank you to everybody for your thoughts and your feedback and your questions. Thank you so much to our speakers today. Marco, a really broad experience that you've brought to what we're focusing on today. Thank you so much. And Helena, really focused there on the learning and the good quality use of virtual reality. And Dana Maria, thank you so much for opening up our eyes about different ways of using virtual reality as well. So thank you so much to everybody, and to all of you guys as well. You've all contributed in the chat window, in the questions, and apologies if we didn't quite get to answer your question. Hopefully you got some information about it in the chat. Now, you know that all of our training, all of our webinars will be available on the Training Journal website, so you can always go and have a look at our next webinars and the recordings as well, including this one. It will be up later on this week. You can continue the conversation on Twitter. So just go to #TJwow. That would be really cool if you want to. Or, of course, we've got our Training Journal forum if you want to kind of speak in a bit more detail about things. As for our next webinars, we've got lots of things coming up. We have got all about our Training Journal awards. They're opening up very, very soon. So if you're interested in something about that, please do come along and have a chat about that. In terms of our next few TJwows, the conversation topics, what we've got is neuroscience, which actual neuroscience is going to be really good for us in learning and development. We've got that coming up in March. And we've also got about how learning is changing. And if today's discussion isn't a good example of that, I do not know what is. So that's coming up on the 10th of April. How do we prepare for this change in learning? So we've got all of those coming up. Please do get in contact with us. Please do come along to the ones in the future. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you very much to you. Have a fabulous rest of your day, and we hope to see you in the future. Bye-bye.